Hello, everyone. This is Suzanne at The Gospel Truth. Welcome back. Today is Monday, November 20th, and we have been reading from the book The Hiding Place. It's part of the life of Corrie Ten Bloom. She is sharing what happened to them during World War II. It's been an incredible read so far. So we are going to be starting on chapter 5. Before we get started, I would like to ask for prayers for my family. My grandson came down with COVID, and he was pretty bad because he had his asthma on top of it. And my daughter texted me last night. She's got a bad head cold. Kevin, her husband, is sick, and my autistic grandson, he's probably almost in his 30s now, and he's been out of sorts, and they think he may have something going on also. So it's pretty rough over at their household right now, and we're not going near it at all, especially with a COVID alert. So my daughter decided that we're going to cancel Thanksgiving this year at her house. So I'll think of something to fix for Ron and I. Maybe I'll buy a little turkey breast and mash up some potatoes and stuff like that. So we're just going to have a quiet Thanksgiving at home, which is fine, and we're okay with that. Our health comes first, and that would put quite a strain on my daughter while she's not feeling good. Try to fix a big meal for everybody, and I don't want her doing that, especially when she's not feeling good. I have been still dealing with my gastritis. It's very nasty. I had a really rough night, a really rough morning, and I just feel the acidity all the time, and then sometimes my voice will go hoarse. So I'm waiting out till December 7th to get back with the gastrologist to see if there's more that we can do. The new meds, I'm not sure if they're helping at all yet. Maybe it's too early, but we'll see as time goes by. So this week, I might be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week. So I have a couple of days to get things done around the house. I have some meal preps I need to do. And so it probably is going to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this week. So hopefully when I get done with all this, we'll go back to every day. All right, shall we get started on our story? And for those of you who don't know, again, we are reading The Hiding Place. It's a story of Corrie Ten Bloom. And if you want to go way back to chapter 1, if you haven't been following, it's really a good book to read. All right, let's get started. Invasion. Now, last time when we were on, we heard of a man named Otto who was bullying Christophels, accidental trippings, a shove, a heel ground into a toe, and they were making his life miserable. And finally, they pushed his face into the side of a building and ground his face on the rough bricks. That must have been horrible. And Corrie's father had to let him go. And Otto did not believe in God. He was a German, and he belonged to the Hitler Youth. And he always said, the world will see what the Germans can do. And of course, their plan was to annihilate the Jews. Invasion. Father was 80 years old now, and promptly at 8:45 each evening he would open the Bible, read one chapter, ask God's blessings on us through the night, and by 9:15 he'd be climbing the stairs to his bedroom. Tonight, however, the Prime Minister was to address the nation at 9:30. One question ate through all of Holland. Would there be war? Father warmed up the radio. We did not spend evenings listening to music now. England, France, and Germany were at war. and even Dutch stations carried mostly war news. We could hear that news well enough on the small portable radio we kept in the dining room, a gift from Pickwick the Christmas before. At 9:30, the Prime Minister's voice began. There would be no war. He had assurances from high sources on both sides. Holland's neutrality would be respected. There was nothing to fear. Dutchmen were urged to remain calm. The voice stopped. Betsy and I looked up. Father had snapped off the set, and in his blue eyes was a fire we had never seen before. It is wrong to give people hope when there is no hope, he said. There will be war. The Germans will attack, and we will fall. His voice grew gentle again. Oh, my dears, I'm sorry for all Dutchmen now who do not know the power of God, for we will be beaten, but he will not. He kissed us both good night, and then we heard him climb the stairs to bed. Father, so skilled at finding good in every situation, so slow to believe evil. If Father saw war and defeat, then there was no other possibility. I sat bolt upright in my bed. What was that? A brilliant flash followed a second later by an explosion that shook the bed. I scrambled to the window and I leaned out. The patch of sky glowed orange-red. I whirled down the stairs. At Father's room, I pressed my ear against the door. Between bomb bursts, I heard the regular rhythm of his breathing. I dived down a few more steps into Tan Jan's room. Betsy had moved into Tan Jan's sleeping cubicle to be closer to the kitchen and the doorbell. She was sitting up in bed. Together we said it. War. It was 5 hours after the Prime Minister's speech. We tiptoed to Tan Jan's front room, where the glowing sky lit the room with a strange brilliance. Betsy and I knelt down for what seemed like hours, praying for our country, for the dead and the injured tonight, for the Queen. Then Betsy began to pray for the Germans up there in the plains, caught in the evil loose in Germany. I looked at my sister kneeling beside me in the lights of burning Holland. Oh, Lord, I whispered, listen to Betsy, not me, because I cannot pray for those men. It was then that I had the dream. It could have been a real dream because I was not asleep, but a scene suddenly and unreasonably in my mind. I clearly saw the Grote Markt half a block away, saw the town hall and the fish mart. An old wagon came lumbering across the square, pulled by 4 black horses. To my surprise, I saw that I myself was sitting in the wagon, and Father, too, and Betsy. There were many others. I recognized Pickwick and Toos, William, and young Peter. Together we were slowly being drawn across the square behind those horses. The wagon was taking us away, far away, I felt, but we did not want to go. Betsy, I cried, I've had an awful dream. I felt her arm around my shoulder. We'll go make a pot of coffee. The booming of the bombs was less frequent and farther away as Betsy put on the water. I told her what I had seen. Am I imagining things? Was it kind of a vision? I don't know, Betsy said softly, but if God has shown us bad times ahead, it's enough for me that he knows about them. That's why he sometimes shows us things, to tell us that this, too, is in his hands. That's a very good attitude to have. For 5 days, Holland held out against the invader. We kept the shop open, mostly because people wanted to see Father. Some wanted him to pray for husbands and sons stationed at the borders. Others, it seemed, came just to see him sitting there behind his workbench, as he had for 60 years, and to hear in those ticking clocks a world of order and reason. I never opened my workbench, but I joined Betsy in making coffee and carrying it down. We brought down the portable radio, too, and set it up. After that first night, although we often heard planes overhead, the bombing never came so close again. Then the radio carried the news we dreaded. The Queen had left. I did not cry the night of the invasion, but I cried now. In the morning, radio announced tanks advancing over the border. Suddenly, all of Harlem was in the streets. Even Father, whose daily stroll was as predictable as his clocks, broke his routine to go walking at the unheard hour of 10 a.m. It was as though we wanted to face what was coming together, united. The three of us walked with the crowd in the street. A window flew open. "We've surrendered!" The walkers in the street stopped short. A boy of maybe 15 turned to us with tears rolling down his cheeks. "I would have fought. I would have never given up." Father stopped down to pick up a small cherry blossom petal from the brick pavement. Tenderly, he inserted it into his buttonhole. "That is good, my son," he told the youngster, "for Holland's battle has just begun." During the first few months of occupation, the hardest thing to get used to was the German uniform everywhere. German trucks and tanks in the street, German spoken in the shops, soldiers frequently visiting our store. They were getting good wages, and watches were among the first things they bought. Toward us, they took a superior tone, but as I listened to them excitedly discussing their purchases to each other, they seemed like young men anywhere selecting watches for mothers and sweethearts back home. The shop never made as much money as during that first year of the war. With no new shipments coming in, people brought everything we had in stock. The curfew, at first, was no hardship for us, since it was originally set at 10 p.m. What we did object to were the identity cards each citizen was issued. Though these small folders containing a photograph and fingerprints had to be produced on demand. A soldier or a policeman, the Haarlem police were now under the control of the German commandment, might stop a citizen at any time and ask to see his card. It had to be carried in a pouch around the neck. We were issued ration cards, too. Newspapers no longer carried news we could trust, only long, glowing reports of the successes of the German army, so we depended on the radio. All of a sudden, it sounds like, well, it is, the world is turned upside down. Having to carry a card around their neck with their pictures on it to show ID, upon demand, and having curfews, and nothing is ever going to be the same. Can you imagine? It's hard to wrap my head around because I know there have been wars like you have known there have been wars. I've never been directly involved with an occupation where they come into like the United States and they would start putting demands on us and curfews, rationing food after you're used to just coming and going and doing as you please. Early in the occupation, Haarlemers were ordered to turn in all radios. Since it would look strange if our household produced none at all, Peter suggested we turn in the portable and hide the larger, the more powerful instrument. Peter was 16 at the time of the invasion and shared with the other Dutch teenagers a restless energy. He installed the radio beneath a curve in the stairs just above Father's room and replaced the old boards, while I carried the smaller one down to where the radio collection was being made. Now, I think that was very smart of William, because they want to hear what's going on. They don't want to be cut off from the news, and so they're going to turn in one radio, but not the bigger one. "Is this the only radio you own?" asked the army clerk. I had known from childhood that the heavens rain fire upon liars, but I met his gaze. Yes. I walked out of the building and began to tremble. For the first time in my life, I had told a conscious lie, and it had been so easy. But we saved our radio. Every night, one of us would remove the stair tread and crouch over the radio, the volume barely audible. Then one of us thumped the piano in Tan Jan's room as hard as she could. We listened to the news from England this way. The German offensive was everywhere victorious. Month after month, the free Dutch broadcast would only urge us to wait, to have courage, to believe in the counter-offensive which must surely someday be mounted. Now I'm going to step back up here to Peter telling this lie. And it was a conscious lie. But I tend to think that during a war, all is fair and we have to protect ourselves. And later on, we're going to be reading how this family hid the Jews. And of course, they're going to be found out. But it's just amazing, that, Peter knew that it was very important to have this tool for them to listen. The German used our airport as a base for air raids against England. At night, we heard the growl of engines heading west. Occasionally, English planes retaliated, and then the German fighters might intercept them right over Harlem. One night, as the dogfights raged overhead, I heard Betsy stirring in the kitchen and ran down to join her. We went into the dining room, where we had covered the windows with heavy black paper. Somewhere in the night, there was an explosion. The dishes in the cupboard rattled. We talked until the sound of planes died away and the sky was silent. I groped my way back up to my room. I felt for my bed in the dark. My hand closed over something hard on my pillow. Sharp, too. I felt blood trickle along a finger. It was a piece of jagged metal, 10 inches long. I raced down the stairs with the shrapnel shard in my hand. Betsy and I went back to the dining room and stared at it in the light where she bandaged my hand. On your pillow? She kept saying. On your pillow? Betsy, if I hadn't heard you in the kitchen. Betsy put a finger on my mouth. Don't say it, Corrie. There are no ifs in God's world. The center of his will is our only safety. Oh, Corrie, let us pray that we may always know it. During the first year of German rule, there were only minor attacks on Jews in Holland. A rock through the window of a Jewish-owned store, an ugly word scrawled on the wall of a synagogue. It was as though they were testing to see how many Dutchmen would go along with them. The answer to our shame was many. The National Socialist Bond, Holland's organization of Nazi collaborators, grew larger and bolder with each month of occupation. Nazism was a disease to which some Dutch were susceptible. On our daily walk, Father and I saw the symptoms spread. A sign in a shop window, Jews will not be served. At the entrance to the public park, no Jews. On the door of the library, in front of restaurants and theaters, a synagogue burned down and the fire trucks came, but only to keep the flames from spreading to the buildings on either side. One noon, as Father and I followed our familiar route, the sidewalks were bright with yellow stars sewn to coat and jacket fronts. Men, women, and children wore the six-pointed star with the word Jew in the center. They were surprised to see how many of the people we passed each day were Jews. Worst were the disappearances. Watches, repaired and ready, hung in the back of the shop month after month. We never knew whether their owners had been spirited away by the Gestapo or had gone into hiding before this could happen. One day, as Father and I were returning from our walk, we found that the Grote Market cordoned off by a double ring of police and soldiers. Climbing into the back of a truck were men, women, and children, all wearing a yellow star. Father, those poor people, I cried. The police opened and the truck moved through. We watched it till it turned the corner. Those poor people, Father echoed, but to my surprise he was looking at the soldiers. I pitied the poor Germans, Corrie. They have touched the apple of God's eye. And we know that is a dangerous thing to do, to touch the apple of God's eye. We talked often, Father, Betsy, and I, about what we could do if a chance should come to help some of our Jewish friends. We knew that William had found hiding places at the beginning of the occupation for the German Jews who had been living in this house. William would be the one to ask. On a drizzly November morning in 1941, a year and a half after the invasion, I stepped outside to fold back the shutters. I saw 4 German soldiers coming down the street, combat helmets low over their ears, rifles strapped to their shoulders. I shrank back and watched. At Weil's Furriers, directly across the street, the group stopped. One of the soldiers unstrapped his gun, with the butt banged on the door. The door opened, and all 4 pushed inside. I dashed back through our shop up to the dining room. Betsy, hurry! Something awful is happening at Wiles. We reached the front door in time to see Mr. Wilde backing out of his shop, the muzzle of a gun pressed against his stomach. The soldier left him on the sidewalk, went back into the store, and slammed the door. We could hear glass breaking inside. Soldiers began carrying out armloads of furs. A crowd was gathering in spite of the early morning hour. Mr. Wilde had not moved from his spot on the sidewalk. So they're inside pillaging the furs. And all this man can do is stand up on the sidewalk and watch. A window over his head opened and a shower of clothes rained down on him. Pajamas, shirts, underwear. Slowly, the old furrier began gathering up his clothing. Betsy and I ran across the street to help him. Your wife, Betsy whispered. Where is Mrs. Wilde? The man blinked at her. You must come inside, I said, snatching socks and handkerchiefs from the sidewalk. We propelled the bewildered man across the BG. In the dining room, Father greeted Mr. Wilde without the slightest sign of surprise. His natural manner seemed to relax the furrier a bit. His wife, he said, was visiting a sister in Amsterdam. We must warn her not to come home, Betsy said. Where were the Wildes to live? Father and Betsy and I exchanged glances. William. Someone had to talk to William. It was not the kind of matter that could be relayed through the public phone system, and like most private telephones, ours had been disconnected early in the occupation. I went by train. When I reached the nursing home, William was not there, but Tyne and their 22-year-old son, Kik, were. I told them what happened. Tell Mr. Wilde to be ready as soon as the start, Kik said. At early 9 p.m., the curfew hour, Kip rapped at the alley door. Tucking Mr. Wilde's clothing bundle beneath his arm, he led the man away into the night. 2 weeks later, I saw Kik and asked him what had happened. He smiled at me, the broad, slow smile I'd loved since he was a child. If you're going to work with the underground, Tandy Corrie, you must learn not to ask questions. Kirk's words went round and round in my head. If you're going to work with the underground. Was Kirk working with this secret and illegal group? Was William? We suspected, of course, that there was an underground in Holland. Rumors abounded. The stories always featured things we believed were wrong in the sight of God. Stealing, lying, murder. Was this what God wanted in times like these? How should a Christian act when evil is in power? Father now housed in Tanjan's big mahogany bookcases a large collection of Jewish theology belonging to the rabbi of Haarlem. He had brought them to Father more than a year before, just in case I should not be able to care for them indefinitely. He had waved apologetically at the procession of small boys behind him, each staggering under the weight of several huge volumes. Books do not age as you do and I do, old friend. They will speak when we are gone, to generations we will never see. The books must survive. The rabbi had been the first to vanish from Haarlem. As arrests of Jews in the streets became more frequent, I began picking up and delivering work for our Jewish customers myself so that they would not have to venture into the center of town. One evening in the spring of 1942, I was in the home of a doctor and his wife. The Hamstras and I were talking about the news of the day, when down the stairs piped a childish voice. Daddy, you didn't tuck us in. Dr. Hamstrad was on his feet in an instant. With an apology to his wife and me, he hurried upstairs, and in a minute we heard a game of hide-and-seek going on in the laughter of 2 children. In that instant, reality broke through the numbness that had grown in me since the invasion. At any minute, there might be a rap on the door. These children, this mother and father, might be ordered to the back of a truck. Dr. Hemstra came back into the living room, and the conversation rumbled on. But a prayer was forming in my heart. Lord Jesus, I offer myself for your people in any way, any place, any time. Again, that waking dream passed before my eyes. I saw those 4 black horses in the Grote Markt, as I had the night of the invasion. I scanned the passengers, Father, Betsy, William, myself, leaving Haarlem leaving all that was sure and safe. Going where? Okay, that was the invasion. Next, the secret room. There have been a lot of underground movements going on. A lot of Christian undergrounds, especially in other countries where, if you're even caught with the Bible, you're dead. If you're known that you're a Christian, you're dead. And again, in times of war, sometimes the rules change drastically, and we must protect ourselves as best we can and help others that are in need the best we can. And how many times in wars in the Bible there was wars and rumors of war. There's war and rumors of war today. And God never told us to lay down our arms. When Peter when he cut off the soldier's ear, God told Peter to put your sword away. He didn't tell him to get rid of it, but that was not the proper time to use it. And when you look across the street and you see a good neighbor and they're Jews, you're American, and you see them being pillaged, pushed around, all their things taken from them. And if they didn't get that man out of there, he would probably have gone with them, and he probably would have never been seen before, because the Germans' idea was to eliminate all Jews in the world. All right, when we come back on Wednesday, we'll talk about the secret room. All right, you take care. You have a blessed day in the Lord. This is Suzanne at The Gospel Truth. Thank you for stopping by and giving a portion of your time to hear this great story from the life of Corrie Ten Bloom. Take care for now. Bye-bye.